Hi there, I'm Jen and this is the Roving Crafters and it's Sunday, so it's Sunday Stitch. And on this Sunday, what I'm working on is a project that's going to need a lace edging. So of course I've been thinking about lace edgings and I've been poring over pattern books and playing around with it, and I've settled on the one that I'm going to use as an edging to finish off my next shawl. It's this one. This is an older pattern and I found it going under the name Diamond Edges, Diamond Edge. It's, like I said, it's an old pattern. I'm sure it's gone by plenty of names over the years. And I'm sure that you've seen plenty of strips like this and patterns that call for making lace in these long, continuous, make them as long as you want little strips. Most of the time when I show those to knitters, they seem to think that these kinds of laces are only for making up separate, kind of the way I've done here, and then binding it off and taking it, stitching it onto a piece of cloth like a tablecloth or maybe the edge of a dress or something. And while you could certainly do that with lace edges, they're also intended to be part of a full-size knit project, and it's something that you make and knit it as you go, and it's called a knitted on edge. And unfortunately, most of the books and sources for these kinds of patterns never explain how you take something like this and actually use it in your knitting project. I don't know why, but that's what I'm going to do today. So I've got this little project. It's not a project. It's not even a, it's barely a sample. I've got this little bitty piece. But let's pretend that it's, say, an entire scarf. And I've knitted it as long as I want it to be, and I want to put an edge like this here. How would you do that? That's what we're going to do today. So if this was my piece, let's say, of course, let me get this out of the way. I finished it up and I knitted my wrong side row, and now is when I would normally bind off, but I don't want to bind off. I want to put on a lace edging. So what I do is I cut the thread, cut the working yarn, and leave it. That's going to have to be woven in later. And slide your stitches to the other end of your, hopefully, double-sided needle. And if not, you're going to have to slip some stitches because you need to start working at this end. You need to start working at the end of the right side of your work. And you're going to need to take new yarn and cast on. Now, we could, of course, cast on with the same color that the body is made in, but it's nice to have a different color for your edge, and it's also a lot easier for you to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use a separate color for my knitted on edge, and the pattern that I'm making, which is this one, calls for a cast on of 9 stitches. That's the written in the pattern, and I've included the pattern source in my original post if you wanted to follow along. So at the end of a right side row, you cast on that number. For me, it's 9. Okay. Now, before beginning the pattern, the way it's written in your source, you need to turn and work 1 base row back. So I'm just going to knit this. So start with a knit back row or a knit back setup row, done without splitting your yarn. All the way till you finished off those new stitches that you just cast on. Ta-da! Well, that wasn't hard, was it? But now I want you to bring your working yarn to the front and slip a stitch from the body of your work purlwise, off like that, and then turn. Now, you're looking at the right side of your work. Here's the right side of the base, and this will be the right side of your lace. And whatever your pattern tells you to do first, ignore it. Because what you need to do first is knit two together. So if it says to knit a stitch, and it usually will in the beginning of these lace edges, you knit two together. And as you can see, by knitting two together, you've joined your knitted on lace to your body. And then you can pick up with the pattern and continue to the end of the row. And for me, that's yarn over. It's always tough in the beginning, isn't it? Yeah, there's not enough room to work in those stitches. There we go. Yarn over, knit one, yarn over, and knit one. Okay. That's row one. I know it doesn't look like much. That's row one of my knitted lace. And now I'll do row two. I'm going to follow the pattern as it's written all the way across these stitches. And once I've finished, do the same thing. You do the same thing every time. Bring the working yarn to the front, slip a stitch from the base, from the body, and turn your work. And always start with a knit two together. And then continue with the pattern. For me, I'm on row 3, so I have to knit one more. Knit two together. On a side note, totally unrelated note, you could tell that the pattern I'm working from is an older one because every decrease is a right-leaning decrease. They're either knit two togethers or they're knit three togethers. There's not a slip, slip, knit, or a slip one, knit one, pass slip stitch over. There's not a left, which is usually the sign that you've got an old pattern, and that's just fine. So now I'm working row 4, which is a wrong side row. And I'm going to work it just the way it's written until I get to the end. Which is right there. And then working yarn to the front, slip a stitch, turn. And the first thing you do is knit two together. And that is the trick. I'm going to keep working this and try and talk at the same time. To summarize, you have to slide all your stitches over to the end of a right side row. Cast on the number of stitches that your little lace pattern, whatever it is, calls for. Knit back one row. When you get to the end of that knitted back row, knitted back of what you've cast on, of course, slip a stitch, bring the working yarn to the front, slip a stitch from the body piece, and then turn. When you're at the beginning of a right side row, always start with a knit two together. And then continue with the pattern as written. And that's it. It's actually pretty simple to take these little lace strips, and sometimes they're called lace tape or lace ribbons, and add them onto the end of whatever it is you're knitting. And I gotta tell you, they can really dress up a scarf. They can really dress up the edge of a shawl. If you've ever had a blanket that you've wanted to put a nice, yeah, see, the possibilities are kind of endless. And once you get familiar with this technique, you can substitute one of these knitted on edgings for any bind off anywhere you want. Let's see, what am I on? 7. Yeah. I'm not going to make you watch, because nobody would, watch me knit this whole thing up. But I am going to keep knitting and let the video go so that I can show you what it looks like after I've got a few repeats done. So that's 2 repeats in. And that's what it looks like. So then the base object knit in this direction, or maybe even around in this direction. And then the lace is knit in this direction, the knitted on lace edge, because of course remember we casted these stitches on, for me it was 9, turned and knit back, and then every wrong side row you end with a slip. You slip one of the purple stitches on, and you start every right side row with a knit 2 together, and that binds the 2 pieces together. I think it's really clever, and I think it's a really nice alternative to a standard flat bind off. And you never have to worry about this kind of a finish getting too tight or too loose or stretching out or looking wonky on you, because it's a full knit. It's a full lace edge. And let's see, yeah, like that. So you can pick any lace edging you want from any book or pattern source and add that to your knitting. And if you've followed me all the way back to my blog, to the post that this video goes with, I've cited the source for this pattern, and it's a free online source that has a whole host of knitted lace edges for you to try for free. So I hope you will give it a try, and I hope you enjoy this. Till next time.